Wow. So, I just want to start off by saying I cannot believe it took me this long to sit down and finally watch a movie that I had heard only good slash very good things about. And that is, of course, Trick or Treat from 2007, a film by Michael Dougherty, the same guy who did Krampus, another holiday themed horror film that I was talking to a friend of mine recently, actually, just after watching this, to talk to him about Trick or Treat. And he was like, I can't believe you watched Krampus before you watched this movie. And this is it's kind of a weird background because it didn't come out until like 2010 or 2009, and it was like shelved, if you will, for like 2 fucking years. Michael Dougherty could not. I guess he couldn't pitch it to a production studio in order to actually get it released, which absolutely boggles my mind. I'm going to come out and say it. It has a really high critical acclaim and a pretty good reputation. And I am of the belief that it's probably one of the best Halloween movies made in the past 20 years. I think that that's fair to say. There's a difference between a Halloween movie and a horror movie. This movie embodies Halloween. From the cinematography to the lore of the movie itself. They talk about, I forget how it's pronounced, but it's, the Samhain. They talk about, like, briefly some of the Celtic background of Halloween as a whole. And as somebody who has been to the Great Ohio Halloween Festival at the university in Athens, goddamn, bro, the city in which this movie takes place in Ohio, it looks fucking sweet. Like, you guys have seen like Halloween Town or whatever on Disney Channel, and like you think that looks really cool and like festive and embodies the spirit of Halloween. Nah, this movie, on the other hand, it looks great. It's fantastic. I absolutely love how it oozes. It oozes autumn. It oozes just a great Halloween energy. You really got to watch it to truly understand that. And the movie itself, I guess it's an anthology movie, so it's only 80 minutes long, right? And I'm Gen Z, so I got a bad attention span. I deleted TikTok, but I'm all over social media. I watched TikTok for years, so it's hard for me to keep my attention focused for super long periods of time. And despite this movie being 80 minutes, that is certainly not a weakness. And this movie, 80 minutes, it's perfect. It's tight, and it I don't know, it the pacing is amazing. It's perfect. And for the fact that it is technically an anthology with several different stories, the fact that it's able to wrap them all up together so well, with, for the most part, really satisfying conclusions, in 80 minutes is remarkable. And it's another, great bit of admiration that I have for this movie, a great point of admiration. But yeah, so there's, I guess there's four stories, if you will. We start out with, I guess, our first story. And it's basically a couple who is coming home from like a Halloween party, and basically, it's a man and his wife. I believe they're married. And basically the wife hates Halloween, and I guess gets kind of killed for it. Whatever, she like kicks a jack-o'-lantern, and that awakens a figure, and she ends up getting killed, and so does her husband. Spoiler alert. It's definitely the briefest of all of the stories, although it does start out the movie, and at the very end you see it again, which is pretty cool. I quite like that a lot. Although, if I were to say of the four, if you want to call it four, it's probably my least favorite. It's definitely my least favorite, but it's not bad, but I think my favorites. Um, nah, the next story is got my favorite character in the movie, and that is our boy Thurman Mormon from Bad Santa, one of my favorite movies ever. Love Billy Bob Thornton's performance in that movie as just I don't even know what to say. It's like if Clint Eastwood from Gran Torino had the same kind of likability, but it was a comedy. It's a weird movie that I highly recommend both of those movies. They're fantastic. But you got Thurman Merman playing literally just like a stereotypical fat ass blonde Jufro rocking like Halloween hater, if you will, who's on his Billy Corgan shit. The world is a vampire because he's smashing pumpkins, and the house in which I guess it's his principal. He ends up trying to take all the candy or whatever. It's the classic boat where, please take one, I'm not home. And he ends up being home, and he gives him a piece of candy with a fucking razor blade, or not razor blade in it, cyanide. That's it. And it's a pretty brief story. But long story short, there is a huge and kind of a comical scene that's quite disgusting, where our boy Thurman Mormon is vomiting blood and chocolate. And, there's this great, funny, comical, dark comedy, I guess, laced sequence where he's trying to bury the corpse of the Thurman Merman. And his son keeps interrupting him and yelling down to his father in the backyard, and his father's just trying to bury this corpse and be as discreet as possible, and his son keeps yelling, and his neighbor gets involved, and there's a little bit of a not a throwback, but there's like an allusion to later on in the movie involving our boy Thurman Merman's finger, and it's quite good. It's quite good, and I very much enjoyed the twist that they threw in at the very end, where you think, we know our principal here is a psychopath. Is he really going to kill his own son and leave his son with no parent, or not leave his son? Is he really going to murder his son? But instead, they both commence to, carving Thurman Merman's head in what is a very macabre, surprising story. But it's not my favorite. It's very good. I quite enjoyed it a lot. But I think my favorite has to be the Halloween school bus massacre. Because that is the one which I've heard the most people talk about. And, I am a big fan of disturbing shit. I love Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. I can see the art, and I can commend The Last House on the Left's of the world. And just the idea of a bunch of adults being fed up with having to raise disabled children and hiring a bus driver to literally drive off the edge of a fucking cliff with all their that is just awful. That is horrifying. And the atmosphere in that movie, or in that scene with the kids, whenever they take that creepy fucking winch elevator down, the atmosphere in this movie, the cinematography, everything in this movie is fantastic. Everything. And it had a pretty high budget. It was like 10, 12 million, something like that. But the acting is great. The atmosphere is fantastic. The gore, everything, the lighting, the music, even, if you will. And it's exemplified. This group of kids tries to pull a prank on one of the girls, and you end up seeing like zombified corpses of the children who died in the bus as it like drove off into this rock quarry. and they play a prank on one of the girls that they're with, and she decides to take off. And the prank that they played ended up coming true because they, disguised themselves as zombies or whatever. And she said, "Fuck you guys, I'm getting out of here." And she saves herself and lets everybody else fucking vanquish down underneath. I thought it was badass. I thought it was awesome. And that's kind of a theme throughout this movie, is that basically everybody who dies, in a way, kind of deserves it, or does something in the way of like tarnishing the Halloween spirit. The person at the very beginning, the woman, I mean, all she does is just say that she hates Halloween and kicks a pumpkin. Is that a reason to die? I don't know. But the kids played a really fucked up prank on one of their friends, and they all died because of it. And Thurman Merman was stealing everybody's candy and smashing pumpkins, and he died because of it. So you have all of this the stuff, but the flashback itself, I mean, it is chilling. It is creepy watching them and with all of their masks on and stuff. The kids, that is, and like, oh man, it's wild. And I think the reason why I love this story the most is because it segues into kind of a second half of that story with the bus driver himself, who ends up being the neighbor of the principal from the previous story, right? And I kind of figured that was one of the monkey wrenches the movie tried to throw in. That was one that I kind of saw coming a little bit, to be completely frank. But I mean, it wasn't a hard one to predict. But there's a pretty epic duel, if you will, between he and what is, I guess, the mascot of this movie, who you see throughout, known as Sam, I believe, who's this really unique and just fascinating antagonist, because that's what he is ultimately. And it's like a child, if you will, in like a voodoo ragdoll costume. And it does I think the Michael Dougherty did a fantastic job kind of contrasting, what's probably played by like a 5-year-old who, giggles and cackles, contrasting that boyish the boyish small child in a ragdoll costume with this menacing killer who, whenever it becomes demasked, whenever the principal, who is the principal's neighbor, the bus driver, lots of school, lots of kids, blah, blah, blah. Whenever he fucking blows him away with the shotgun, he becomes unmasked. Like, oh, it's great. I mean, the special effects, the makeup, everything's great, right? And yeah, no, it's a fantastic, little short, and once again with revenge. Our bus driver, he doesn't actually die, but he ends up kind of getting what he deserves, because he killed all those people. We don't technically see him die, but he survives the attack from Sam, as funny as it is, but then he gets his shit rocked by all of the zombified kids that he killed, I guess. And then the final story, that's kind of separate, and in these sequentially, what's so unique and awesome is that they all run around the same time at the same place in the same universe. It's not like Creepshow at all. Not like Creepshow at all. And I have nothing wrong with Creepshow. My attention span loves short, creepy, unique, different horror stories like Creepshow, right? Like, all of those movies, Body Bags, Twilight Zone movie, they're all great. I love those, but this is a lot different. And I guess this is the final story. This one, I do quite like it a lot, not as much as the others, but basically is a group of a couple girls, and they basically are just kind of slutting out on a Friday night or whatever. and one of them is with her sister, who is like a 22-year-old virgin who is really trying to score. And she ends up running into a guy who is dressed up as a vampire, who you see actually kill a woman earlier in the movie. And you're like, oh fuck, this girl is really meek, really shy. She, is really desperate to get laid, and like her sister and her friends are trying to get her laid. And, she ends up getting with the evil vampire character who we saw, like I said, kill a woman earlier. And we're like, oh fuck, she's going to get desperate and it's going to get her killed. And it completely flips and subverts expectations on every front. Every single front, right? Not only does she end up trapping this killer that we thought was going to end up trapping and killing her, but not only is he not really a vampire, but she's a werewolf, right? She and her sister and all her friends, they end up having a party, if you will, and that party ends up being this big like mass werewolf feeding orgy, if you will. And I guess the werewolf effects aren't 110% perfect. They still look good, but I guess if you really wanted to look for something that was not the greatest in the world, okay, maybe the werewolf makeup wasn't a 100 out of 100, but it was like a 90 out of 100. But yeah, not only do you not see that coming, but who is it that she ends up killing? Who was it that was the suspect in trying to kill her after killing another woman? It's our principal. And it just lives around purposely, because in that story in which he kills Thurman Merman, he talks about he has a date and he'll hang out with his son after, and then he ends up going on a date with this problematic 22-year-old virgin, and she ends up killing him for trying to kill her and also killing another woman. Once again, continuing on with that awesome revenge theme, and it subverted my expectations on so many different levels. Not only did I not see it being revealed to be the principal, I didn't see them being werewolves. I didn't even see them getting revenge at all on the character. I thought that based on all of the different, I don't even want to say like supernatural things that have happened throughout the movie. This shit literally, like, there is slasher elements. There is demonic elements. There's creepy Celtic, ritualistic shit. There's monsters. There's suspense. There's mystery. There's thrills. There's dark humor. I mean, there's literally, and it's all moshed into an anthology. I mean, this is as good of a horror movie that I've seen in the 21st century. It's one of the best. It's the best Halloween movie I think I've seen. There have not been a lot of Halloween movies. There have been a lot of movies that are horror, and horror naturally aligns with a lot of, artistic and stylistic Halloween values. But when it comes to straight Halloween movies, this is the best I've seen, hands down. And I love Halloween the Slasher, and I think the Halloween the Slasher is very significant, and it's a greater film. But this is a really good, and it is going to definitely enter my repertoire, my lineup, my playlist, if you will, for October and just for Halloween in general. It is going to be in the rotation. I highly recommend it to everybody. I think just if you love the fall, if you love scary movies, if you like movies in general, and just, I don't think this movie is off limits for really anybody. It is pretty violent, it is pretty violent, but I feel like the Sam antagonist himself kind of levels it out a little bit in a way, and just, all of the young adults / kids in the cast kind of levels out the accessibility, I think, and the visibility for certain viewers. But yeah, no, it's great. I love the ending, how it wraps everything together. And I kick myself for two reasons. A, for taking so long to finally watch this as a horror fan, and B, not watching this in October, but I'm promising myself that I will watch this this October. 110% guaranteed. It's a 5 out of 5. It is probably the best horror movie I have seen since I started watching a bunch of new ones. It's great. Go watch it.